Color gels fall into one of two categories generally: color corrective and then more creative. Now, color corrective is things like CTBs and CTOs. What that means is it's changing the color temperature or the tint of a light. So let's say that you're shooting a scene and the entire scene is lit by windows, it's daylight, but then you have a tungsten light and it's just not mixing correctly. What you can add is a color temperature blue, a CTB gel. You add that to the tungsten light and it cools it down and it moves it in the direction or changes it to being daylight. And then there's also the other direction. There's CTOs, color temperature orange. And so in that example, it might be you're in a room filled with tungsten lights, but then your light that you have, maybe the strobe you have, it's daylight balanced. So you can add a CTO, an orange gel, and now it's going to make it have a tungsten color temperature. And so these gels you can buy in color correction kits, and they'll look something like this. And they usually come in stops of gel, so it might be a fourth stop or a half stop or a full stop, full cut is what they'll say, of CTB or CTO. And they also have these for fluorescent lights. There's a lot of different colors, and typically you would buy it in a color correction kit. You'll notice that the color is not very saturated. For the most part, for this class, we're not going to be using corrective color gels. Instead, we're going to be using something like this kit, which is very, very saturated, very unique colors. So for example, having a magenta, a really rich magenta gel, that's not going to achieve anything corrective. It's purely, that very saturated color is purely for creative effect. And so a kit like this has a wide range of colors. We're going to have a really, really saturated green and blue and red and pink. So let me show you the difference. So again, with a CTB, relatively desaturated, relatively see-through, it's color corrective. But now when I go to the creative color gels, something like this, you get much more saturated blues. And so you're going to be able to get those really rich colors that you see so often in more creative gel photography. Here's another example of a blue saturated gel. As a note, you will see that this gel is all wrinkly and dirty, and honestly, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to change what your light looks like. So yeah, you can keep them nice and organized, but you'll see regularly from me, I'm folding gels, cutting them, things like that, whatever makes it easier for me. When you're looking to buy a kit, remember that you're looking for creative colors or more saturated colors. And so for this class, for every setup that I do, I'll actually tell you the exact color of gel that I'm using. And in the recipe guide, I'll list the same thing. So if you want to be able to recreate those colors. Let's talk about attaching the gels to your strobes. All right, now first of all, the tape. The tape that you use is really important. You can't just use any tape. And specifically what you need to use is something called gaff or gaffer's tape. The reason this is so important is because it won't leave a sticky residue on your lights. A lot of times when the modeling lights are on or you have your strobes going, they'll actually get hot and any other sort of tape will melt and it can cause a problem with your lights. So gaff tape is specifically what you want, and it also isn't going to cause any damage to the gels. All right, now, with a strobe like this, the way that the flash tube is actually recessed and it has the frosted glass in front, you can take a piece of gaffer's tape and you can attach it directly to the front of the light. Now, the reason that you can do this is because the modeling light and the flash head are not exposed. A lot of times, depending on your strobe, they'll actually be sticking out, and if you did this with the gel would be touching. You won't be able to do that because it will almost instantly melt your gel. So in an instant like that, you won't be able to tape it to the front of it. You'll have to do something else. There are little setups that can allow you to have these little clip arms that you can attach the gel to, or you can use something like a zoom reflector. When you put the zoom reflector on now, it's going to put some distance between the front hot part of the light and where you attach the gel, and that'll be enough distance that it isn't going to cause a problem. So now you can attach the gel to the front of the zoom reflector. Now, the way that I did this, what I wanted to show you is you can actually see, if I rotate this, you can actually see out the side that the gel is not flush to the front of the zoom reflector. That will likely cause you a problem. And the reason being is some of the non-gelled, some of the white light is going to be escaping through there. Depending on the angle that you have this pointed, it could actually hit your subject, or maybe the white light is bouncing off a wall back onto your subject. So you need to do one of two things. You either need to have it so that it is, you either need to have it so that it's flat, just from how you place it here. Okay, so see, when I did this, now it is falling flat against the zoom reflector, or you need a second piece of tape to tape it underneath. Basically, you want to look for any spills or any leaks from it. Next, let's talk about attaching gels to other modifiers. The important thing to remember is that something like a softbox or a big umbrella, you don't need to buy huge gels. The really big gels, you can buy them in all different sizes. They're very, very expensive. So what you need to do is just make sure that the head is covered by the gel, not the entire front of the modifier. So what you'll need to do is open up, pull off the diffusion, pull off other pieces in there, and then put the gel recessed back up against the head. So let's take a look with this 3-foot Octobox. I'm actually going to put the gel right back here, and that's going to gel the entire light. And the difference is going to be here with a zoom reflector, I'm going to get very hard specular light. We'll talk about qualities of light. Here, I can actually have the qualities of light from the softbox. So it actually makes a difference what modifiers you use. The gel will take on the qualities of that light, soft, hard, and in between. So now let's add a gel. And then you just close it back up. One more thing to keep in mind that I'm sharing from my own experiences is the higher the output of the strobe, the more you have to actually worry about the gel melting. So I was shooting with a 1,000-watt strobe once, and I put this gel right up against the front of it. It was the same strobe as I have here, just 1,000 watts. Put it right up against it, and I had the light. I didn't realize I had it on 10. I had it on full power. And I took a few frames, and those few frames actually caused the gel to warp a little bit. So you just want to be careful when you have really high-powered lights that you don't want to have the gel right up against the light. You may need a little bit of distance. But if you had something like a zoom reflector, also know that you are changing the spill, the spread of that light. And so again, this is why it's good to have a foundation of how modifiers and lights work, so you understand that as you change the modifiers, it's changing what the light looks like. Next, let's talk about the exposure and metering for gels. Now, to a certain extent, you can't exactly meter gels to get the correct exposure because depending on the brightness or darkness of the light, it actually changes what the gels look like. So to a certain extent, how bright that light is arbitrary based on the concept of your shoot, the color that you're seeking. So what I mean by that is if you take a normal white light, let's say an Octobox 3-foot here lighting me, you can meter it to give you the correct exposure. But now let's say I throw a gel on it. Depending on how bright or dark I make that light, I actually change what the gel looks like. I might make it more pastel or washed out. I might make it darker, more saturated. The power output of that light changes what the color looks like. So let me show you what that looks like in practice. Here I have a single strobe. It is a zoom reflector with a magenta gel on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to vary the output of that gel. We're lighting the background here, and you're going to see how it changes how that color looks. So let's take one shot and take a look at this. All right, so you can see that the power output is lower. And looking at the background, you see how it's a saturated magenta. It's very deep. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this light by stop increments. So let's make it one stop brighter. Take another photo. Another stop brighter. Take another photo. Another stop. And then one more stop. So now it's full power of that light. Okay. So taking a look at the shots that we've just taken, which one of these is correctly exposed? Which one of these is the background the right color? And the answer is they all are. It kind of depends on what you're trying to achieve. For example, when I had that light at a higher power, you'll notice how it's not only brighter, but the color is also a little bit washed out. It's a little bit more pastel. But when I had the light at a lower power, the color is a little bit more saturated. It's a little bit richer as well as darker. So let's imagine that I'm doing a beauty shoot and it's kind of a cotton candy theme. So she's got, maybe a pink lip on, and well, I might want a more pastel background, so I need to turn that light up in power. And let's say that I'm doing something a little sexier, maybe a really dark, deep magenta lip, and I want it to be more mysterious, more shadows. Maybe I want that light at the lower power to give me that super saturated magenta. So my point is, I can't tell you the exact correct exposure or brightness of a particular light with a gel. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. Now, in the recipes and all the setups that I'm going to be doing, we can take meter readings. It does tell me the power of that light. But something that you need to consider is that it's going to change based on the gel. It's also going to change based on the surface that that gel is lighting. So for example, here I'm shooting on a gray background. Let's say that I change this background to black. I'm going to need to turn the power of that light up even higher to be able to achieve similar results. And if it were a white background, I'm going to have to turn the power of that light down. So imagine the difference with white skin or black skin. That will also make a difference. So when I give you a meter reading, I'm telling you what the power of the light was hitting that meter, but make it look good. Know that as you change the power of a light with a gel on it, it changes what the results look like, and it needs to fit your concept, not just specific numbers. So actually look at your shot and see if the gel is working for you.